King Tut and UFOs. In this study, we will explore a mystic symbol discovered in King Tut's tomb that will help to unveil the mysteries of the UFO movement. The discovery of King Tut's tomb was one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. Egypt is a land of mystery and intrigue. Monuments of the past, such as the Great Pyramids at Giza, tell the story of a fabulous civilization which is still an astonishment to the world. People from many countries visit the site of the Great Pyramids each year. They gaze in amazement at their great height and the size of the massive stones that were used to construct these gigantic monuments. The Sphinx, in solemn silence, still faces the east, looking toward the land of the rising sun. But our interest is toward the south of Giza, to the Valley of the Kings in central Egypt. It is here where our story takes place, dealing with this mystic symbol and King Tut's tomb. As we look at a map, we see the pyramids in the northern part of Egypt. The Great Pyramids of Giza are about 350 miles from the Valley of the Kings. It is here in Thebes that many of the famous temples and tombs of Egypt can be seen. The Nile is the lifeblood of Egypt. The ancient Egyptians called it the river of life. Through the centuries, the flooding of the Nile has brought rich topsoil to the land, which meant food for the people. Wildlife flourished along the banks of the Nile, and artists depicted the life of the hunter as they hunted the birds that lived near the flowing river. Egyptian art was unrivaled in the ancient cultures. Life has remained much as it has for centuries along the banks of the Nile. Artisans still work at their trade. This man is making cages that will be sold in Cairo at a later time. The great Memnon Colossi can be seen in this part of the world. Ruins of mighty temples can also be viewed in central Egypt. This is the Temple of Karnak with its hypostyle hall. The obelisk seems to be ever present in the temple system of Egypt. It's like a pyramid on a stick. The serpent and the sun are seen over and over again in the hieroglyphs, the picture writing of this ancient land, symbolizing the giving of life. The eastern side of the Nile was associated with the living, but the western side of the Nile was called the Valley of the Dead. And it is here where King Tut's tomb was discovered on November 26, 1922. On a desolate, rock-strewn land, we traveled the road to King Tut's tomb. It was here that Howard Carter first saw the tomb of King Tut that was sealed for over 3,000 years. It is a hot, dry valley, and it was aptly named the Valley of the Dead. If you go there today, this is what you will see if you go down into King Tut's tomb. Let us try to imagine what it was like in 1922 when Howard Carter first discovered this tomb. His companion was Lord Carnarvon. And when Lord Carnarvon was with Howard Carter, and Howard Carter pulled away the first stones and looked into that tomb, Carnarvon asked Carter, "What do you see?" And Carter said, "I see gold everywhere." And his were the first eyes to look into that tomb from the time it was sealed, about 1,300 years before the time of Christ. It seemed that other eyes were looking at Carter's eyes, eyes that were shrouded in darkness for centuries. And Carter discovered a tremendous tomb that had fabulous wealth. This was what Carter saw when he first looked into the tomb. Objects dealing with life after death that were never to be seen by human eyes. Eventually, Carter came to the innermost room, where a jackal god sits on a gilt chest full of jewels and sacred objects. Continuing on, Carter entered the antechamber, where he saw two life-size figures flanking the sealed door that led to the burial chamber. On the other side of that door, Carter discovered the casket of King Tut. Eventually, Carter had the lid lifted, and this is what he wrote. The tackle for raising the lid was in position. I gave the word. Amid intense silence, the huge slab, broken in two, weighing over 1.25 tons, rose from its bed. Carter continued on. A gasp of wonderment escaped our lips. So gorgeous was the sight that met our eyes. A golden effigy of the young boy king, of most magnificent workmanship, filling the whole interior of the sarcophagus. Carter continued, it all surpassed anything we could have imagined. The boy king had 3 caskets covering his body. When Carter first looked upon this head of the outermost casket and shone his light on that gold, he must have marveled at the workmanship of the artisans of ancient Egypt. This outermost casket was to symbolize the boy king being Osiris, the god of the dead. When the lid of the first coffin was lifted, a second coffin was revealed, fitting exactly in the first. It too was gold-plated. This represented another phase in the king's life. Beautifully done. Within the second coffin, there was a third coffin, wrapped in red linen. When Carter saw this, he really marveled, because the innermost casket was solid gold. It weighed 2,448 1/8 pounds of solid gold. The head alone weighed 900 pounds of this precious metal. Carter saw one of the greatest wonders to be seen in archaeological finds. As Carter shone his light on the head of the innermost casket, it revealed the purest gold with a tremendously high polish.